G'day, Nick Dingle here, everybody. We're on to the next lesson for software engineering, part 7, if statements. Now, this is where the magic truly happens in programming. It's where things get a lot more interesting, and you can start doing things like making chatbots, making games, making all sorts of things, okay? So let's jump in. What the hell is an if statement? If statement, sometimes known as a decision or a selection, is a way of asking a question in your code and executing blocks of code based on if the condition was true or false. Now, that was a fairly chunky long sentence. Look at this example over here on my left-hand side. I've got a variable. I'm allocating it to 5. So number equals 5. Great. If number is greater than 0, well, it is because it's 5, then print number is positive. Okay. So in this case here, all we would see as a user on the screen is number is positive because the if statement found out that 5 is greater than 0, so it prints that message number is positive. What about the opposite of that? Okay, what if it was negative? Okay, number equals negative 15. If number is greater than 0, well, the number is positive. No, it's not. So this is false because 15 is not greater than 0. It actually skips over line 4 and then keeps on going. Okay, whatever lines of code are inside what's called this code block here, okay, that's what this chunk is called here, a code block, then it will skip over the entire code block and then continue its merry way down the program. So let's have a look. Okay, again, do not save your script when you're practicing these as if.py because it will confuse Python. So let's say number equals 100. And what you do to write an if statement is you must use the keyword if, all lowercase, and then you write your condition. Now, if you remember back a number of videos in our comparison operators, you can use all sorts of things. You can use equals, does not equal, less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, all that kind of stuff. You can use and, ors, and nots in your if statements. But to keep it simple, if number is less than 0, and then you put a colon, a double dot at the end, and then when you press enter, you'll notice it automatically puts an indent there, a tab. I'll talk about that very soon, but do not delete it, please. Do your command. Your number is negative. And we'll even do your number in squigglies, so it prints the number, is negative. And then down here, notice I got rid of that indent. We'll just print the message all done. Like so. Hit play. Notice it doesn't say your number is negative. And that's because this became false. And it means it jumped over my line 4 and it went straight down to line 6. Okay. What if I change that to -1? Your number, -1, is negative. And then it says all done again. Okay. So that's the basics of an if statement. You asking a question and running code based on if it's true or if it is false. All right. Let's quickly have a look at something I want to talk about. There's a blank slide. I don't know why. Now, how do you write an if statement? I did briefly talk about it just then when I did the demo, but I just want to emphasize a couple of things. It must start with the keyword if. If you don't have the if at the beginning, it doesn't know what you're doing. It must be followed by a condition, and a condition is anything that results in a true or it results in a false. Okay, so you can literally write the word true or false. You can write any comparison. You can use any logic operator. It's entirely up to you. The if line must then end with a colon because that's what Python expects. And the next line must have an indent, and then you can write as many commands as you want. In fact, you can write another if statement inside that. I don't recommend it, but we'll talk about that in a future video. It's called nested if statements. Okay, so this is the structure. Now, if your brain is not comprehending this, if it is struggling to all buggery, let's talk about the indents, because this is where a lot of people get caught out when they first look at them and just go, what is going on? So the indent on the front, sometimes known as a white space or a tab, is incredibly important because what the indents tell you in Python, what's called the scope of the code. Now, if you don't know what the hell scope means, it's essentially where does this code belong? Okay, and if you look at this example here, you'll notice that lines 1, 3, and 5 are all on the same level. In fact, they're as far left as they can go. They have no indent. This is known as the global scope. So any line of code I write on the far left, okay, is part of my main script, okay? It doesn't belong to anyone. Well, in fact, it does belong to the main script, but yeah. So that will run line 1, line 3, and line 5 no matter what. Okay, however, line 4 has been indented once. Okay, and what I mean by that is I've simply pressed the tab key on the keyboard one time. Some websites will tell you to put a double space. I hate that. Don't use double spaces. Just simply hit tab on your keyboard. And the reason why I like that is because you can press shift tab to go back if you need to. There will be cases where you do need to do that. So the fact that this is indented tells us the scope of this line belongs to the if statement straight above it. Okay, this is the way that Python writes its code. Okay, so line 4 belongs to this if statement. It means if this if statement is true, line 4 gets executed. But if the if statement on line 3 is false, just line 4 is skipped over, okay, because it's the only line in the if statement's scope. So that means this is false, jumps to line 5, and continues on its merry way, okay? So if that doesn't make sense, go and write this code out and try it out. See what happens. See what lines are printed to the screen. Play with the numbers, all sorts of things to try and get a handle on this scope. Now, when you have a line under the if statement, you can have multiple lines for your if statement. Okay? And you'll notice they're all tabbed across, and that means they all belong to this if statement. Okay, so when I run this code, all 3 prints get executed. If the if statement is false, because I change it back to 100 or whatever, it doesn't execute any of those lines inside the scope of that if statement. Okay, these lines here all get completely ignored and skipped over. So thus, line 8 is the only thing it can do. All right, hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. If any of these lines you actually don't want to be in the if statement, just shift tab. It goes back to the left-hand side. Now it doesn't belong to the if statement. And if you're not sure what code belongs to an if statement, you can follow this line on the left-hand side that Visual Studio Code gives you, and that tells you what lines belong to the if statement. You can even collapse if statements, and that sort of indicates, oh, okay, any code left over doesn't belong to the if statement scope. All right. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense, because we're about to move on and add in a few more concepts. So go and practice this, write out some code, try it out, get if statements to go nuts, maybe integrate an input function from the previous videos and see what you can come up with. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, there are different ways of writing if statements, because sometimes you might ask only one question. Sometimes you might ask 2 questions. Sometimes you might have 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., etc., etc. Okay, well, in this case, if you just want one if like we've been doing, you just write a normal if, the condition with a colon, and then the command with a tab on the front. That's a simple one. We call that a binary selection because there's only one choice, okay? However, what if you've got 2 things to happen, okay? Well, then you could write if with a condition, which has a command in it, but then you can have an else. Okay, so if this condition is true, this command gets executed. If it's false, the else command gets executed. Okay, so let's try that here. Okay, let's do this for your number as negative. Okay, we'll put an else. Make sure it's not tabbed across because otherwise it's inside the scope of the if. We don't want that. And it does have a colon on the end. Then we print your number is positive. Oh, wow, that was not the word positive. And we'll get rid of there. So hit play, and you'll notice that it skips over this one here, and it accesses the else, and then it prints your number is positive. So if it's less than 0, then print the negative message. Otherwise, okay, for everything else, print the number is positive. Now, that doesn't really work, does it? Because if I type in 0, if I set this to 0, it's going to tell me it's positive. Well, 0 is neither positive nor negative. So we need a bit more of a complex if statement. In this case, we can do an else if, it's called. Okay, so this one is called a multi-way selection, something a little bit more complex for you. So binary selections have one or two choices, and a multi-way can have 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. Okay, go nuts. But in this case, you have if at the top, just like always. And then the second choice is what's called an else if or elif in Python. I don't like it, but it's what we've got. So elif, and then we can have else at the bottom. Now, else always appears at the very end. Okay, so you make sure you've got that down pat. So let's make this a bit more complex. So if the number is smaller than 0, it is negative. And let's change this to an elif. And you have to write a condition. If you're going to use elif, you must have a condition at the end. If the number is greater than 0, then our number is positive. Test time. Okay, number 100 is positive. Hooray. Okay, -1. It is negative, and then you type in 0, and then you get nothing. So this is where the else comes in, okay? We could write another else if, or you could just simply write else, okay? Your number is 0. Full stop. Okay, we press play. First one was false, second one was false, and because they were both false, it goes to the else statement and prints your number is 0. So this is the power of if statements, okay? And just to give you a visualization, again, if you're struggling with the idea of what the hell is going on, have a look at this example for me. I've got if condition, then run a command, and then afterwards we run another command. So this is in the if statement, this one is not. And what that would look like is in a flow chart, you have a question, okay? And this question could be, if the username is correct, okay, log them in and then display something, okay? If they get it wrong, it jumps straight to displaying something. Simple as that, okay? So we've got this little branch off the main path and then it goes back to normal. So this is your binary selection. What if we use the else statement? Well, that just looks like this, okay? We again have a question that we ask, and there is a true path and a false path that we go down, but they both end up back at the normal line of code and just keep going. So if the condition is true, you run the command, and then we go back to normal and keep going. If it's false, you do something else, and then you go back to the normal. And that's what this looks like visually. Now, the next one, bear with me, because this is going to look absolutely nuts when we first look at it. Okay, my head's going to be in the way, so I'm going to move out of the way. So you can see we've got two conditions and an else, and we've got command 1, command 2, and another command. So if the first one is true, well, it runs the first command, and then it just goes back to normal. Okay, that would be if this condition up there is true. What if condition 1 is false? Well, then it goes down this path and checks if condition 2 is true. If it is, run command 2, go back to normal. Okay, and that would be this one just here. What if this is false and this is false? Well, then we go down and we just run another command and then we go back to normal. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense, okay? This is a flowchart representation of what's going on with these if statements. It allows you to make branches of codes and have some code run and some code not run. Okay, simple as that. All right. So I've already done this example, so we're going to move on with our life. What about a different example? What if we want the user to write in what day it is? Okay, so in this case, we get them to write in the day using the input command. What day is it? We remember that in our variable day. And we say if the day is equal to. So we have to use a double equals here because we're checking if they're the same or if they're different. Okay, if day is equal to Monday, then print good luck. Okay, notice I've got the quotes around the word Monday, and that's me literally checking if they've typed in that word. Now that will mean if they type in Monday with a lowercase m, it will think it's different to this Monday here. Okay, there are ways around it, but that's for a later video. If the day is Friday, then TGIF, and otherwise hang in there because it must be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Saturday, Sunday. I don't know. Some people stress out on the weekend. I don't know. Maybe you can improve on this by adding a Saturday and improving it by adding a Sunday as well. Okay, so what about another example? We all love examples. Let's do some more. I love examples. Let's do a favorite fruit list. I'm actually going to do this one here. So let's go up here comment out this code with a control KC, and let's print fruit list. And then we're going to ask them what fruit they really love. I'm going to press tab here. A is for apple, B is for banana, like so, and C is for carrot, because it's totally a fruit. And then we ask the user what their favorite fruit is. So fruit equals input, what's your favorite? Okay, space after the question mark, so there's a gap. And now we're going to check what did they choose. Now we're not checking for the word apple, we're not checking for the word banana, and we're not checking for the word carrot. We're simply checking what letter they chose. Did they choose A? Did they choose B? Or did they choose C? Or was it something else? Did they go all out? Okay, so we type in if the variable fruit is equal to, remember, double equals, the letter A, and then we print apples are great, like so. Then, because we've got two more options, let's put an L if fruit equals B, then we print bananas can be great. Okay, I had a banana yesterday that was very, very bruised. Wasn't a big fan. Let's put another else if for fruit equals C. Then we print carrots aren't really a fruit. Are they a legume? I don't know. All right, then finally, what if they chose something stupid? What if they chose D, or they typed in dogman or something? Let's put the else. That's why else becomes very handy, because you can cover every single base. And we just put invalid fruit. Let's give it a go. Let's hit print. Okay, again, need to make sure these are capitals, because if it's lower, it's not going to work. So capital A, apples are great. Okay, you should always test every single path of your program. So I'm going to go through, just double check. Carrots aren't really a fruit. And then if I type in a lowercase a, you'll see it says invalid fruit, because little a and a big A are completely different. I could type in 100, invalid fruit. Simple as that. So if statements, this is where things start to get very, very interesting. Another example. We love examples. What about a number guessing game? Okay. This is like my favorite thing to do when I start programming in a new language. Okay. Whoops. Why did my cursor go down there? Let's ask him for a number. Okay. Guess equals int. Remember, if you're going to use input and you want a number, put int around it. Okay. Guess my number. 1 to 5, colon with a space, because that's what I like to do. Now we're going to check if they were correct. So if guess equals 3. Now I don't put quotes around the number 3, because quotes are only for strings. If it's an integer, you do not put quotes around. So print correct guess. Okay, else wrong, try again, like so. Hit play. It's 1. I got it wrong. 3, correct. All right. So this gives us some great sort of direction. I would like you to play around with this. Go nuts. Make your own menus. Make your own little chat bots. Use 100 inputs, okay? If statements are where the fun begins. See if you can figure out how to make that a random number so it changes every single time. Okay. But that is it, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. I'm going to catch you in the next one.